What's up, everybody? We are back with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice, this time for the single game showdown slate. Thursday Night Football, Minnesota Vikings, Philadelphia Eagles. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co founder here at Occupy Fantasy. Single game, $1 million winner. In these videos, if you're new here, welcome, first of all. What we do is we talk about the injuries that impact the slate, and obviously there are a few for this game tonight that certainly impact the slate. We talk about low risk and high risk lineup construction tips and just general overall high level strategies for tonight's showdown slate. So let's jump into it. Eagles and Vikings, Minnesota coming off a loss to Tampa Bay in week one, Philly coming off that win over New England also in week one. Now let's start with the Philadelphia side, injuries. And let's start at the high level. And while most people don't really consider these types of injuries for fantasy contests, you should be. And Philly is missing two defensive starters tonight. Cornerback James Bradbury, starting safety Reed Blankenship. Both these guys played 90+% of the snaps last week against New England. And despite playing 90% plus of the snaps and being starters, they still gave up multiple passing touchdowns, three in fact, to Mac Jones. So with those guys out, a lot of the beat reporters are already worried about that thin group, both at safety and corner. So that's pretty good news for Minnesota pass catchers. However, Minnesota is missing their starting center, Garrett Bradbury. Their starting left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, is questionable. I think he's going to play limited in practice all week, short week. He's probably going to suit up and be fine. But Bradbury played just 7 snaps last week. Clearly, Minnesota had trouble dealing with Tampa Bay's pressure schemes in that loss. But the nice thing is, and it's the nicest thing you could possibly say when you're missing your starting center, is that he missed most of last week. He's out. They knew he was out from the get-go this week, so they were able to really put a plan in place, hopefully. And the backup center didn't perform too poorly last week. Obviously, it's just not ideal, especially against that Eagles front four, front seven. Really tough matchup here for the Minnesota offensive line. But if Kirk Cousins can get some time, if they can scheme up some protection, he's going to have shots downfield against backup secondary players for Minnesota. So just something to keep in mind as we're building our lineups. Obviously, the most important injury is to Kenneth Gainwell, which sounds crazy, something that we didn't think we would say heading into week two. But Kenneth Gainwell really led this group last week. Let's look at Philadelphia running backs. And if we look at Kenneth Gainwell, he has been ruled out with that rib injury. 14 carries last week, 4 targets, so 18 opportunities. So I know most people figured this would be a backfield split of some sort. Kenneth Gainwell caught some steam late in the preseason in best ball and season-long ADP, but came out and dominated touches last week. And maybe we could have figured this out looking at the preseason usage and reading between the lines, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But Gainwell played most of the snaps. DeAndre Swift disappointingly had 3 opportunities. Boston Scott had 2, so right behind him. So it's not like Swift pulled away from Boston Scott. However, Gainwell is out tonight. Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch last week. Basically, they said if Nick Sirianni said on his radio spot yesterday that if Swift and Scott were going to combine for like 5 touches, there's definitely no point in bringing up Rashad Penny to the game day active roster if those guys can't get more than 5 touches. What is the point if he doesn't play special teams? Penny's going to be active tonight. Remember, they brought him over from Seattle in the offseason. So if we scroll down, we have Kenneth Gainwell. Let's go to flex so we can look at this. He would have been 7K. DeAndre Swift is just $4,000 on DraftKings. Boston Scott, $2,200. Rashad Penny, $1,600. Now, Boston Scott is the veteran. He does have these random blow-up games from time to time. However, if you look around the industry, if you look at what beat reporters are projecting, Swift is the guy tonight that they expect to carry most of the load. Very realistic possibility Swift gets 15 plus touches, a good portion coming through the air. So he's going to be probably one of the highest owned players on the slate, certainly the highest owned player below 5K on DraftKings and below 10K on FanDuel. Extremely popular, both at the captain and in the flex spots, but especially at the flex spots. Rashad Penny should be next in line. The idea here, the belief is that since Gainwell was out, Penny can come in and take some of that early down work, maybe even some of that goal line work. So at the cheapest price of the group, Penny's going to get the next most ownership. Not a crazy amount. Most people are going to flock to Swift. And no one's really going to play Boston Scott, despite playing last week, despite getting a red zone opportunity last week in a crowded backfield, despite nearly matching the touches of DeAndre Swift. Boston Scott, no one's going to play. So let's consider that leverage for later on. So to recap, Swift projects really well. the projections are unstable because we don't truly know how this backfield is going to shake out. Penny is next as far as ownership goes. Should get some early down work after being inactive last week. Boston Scott is going to mix in first, second, third downs, even some red zone at $2,200. So with that in mind, let's turn our attention to low-risk contests. 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-heads. Just have to beat half the field to double your money. And let me take a quick drink here, and I'll talk about the two strategies that we normally discuss when it comes to low-risk showdown contests. If you read our showdown guide, the link is in the description below. We partnered up with Justin Freeman from Run the Sims a couple of years ago to talk about showdown strategies and historical statistics for winning lineups. In low-risk contests, two strategies. We either try to lock up all the scoring, and that is playing both quarterbacks, both running backs, kickers, defenses. Just that way, if there's a touchdown scored in the game, we likely have some part of it. Or, and this will be the case in this game, you're playing the values. Guys that are clearly mispriced for their roles, way underpriced. DeAndre Swift fits the bill here. However, it's extremely tough on DraftKings because you have to make some tough decisions on who you're going to leave out. Right? Let's get both teams in here. Let's sort by salary. Let's assume we're playing Jalen Hurts, highest projection, quarterback, favored team at home, playing him at captain. And then you put in DeAndre Swift, the likely leading back for Philadelphia. You put in Alexander Mattison, dominated opportunities last week as his first game as a true starter in the league. Just 7,600, pretty affordable there. Kirk Cousins, another quarterback. Now, this makes it so we can't fit in Justin Jefferson. We have to play the Eagles receivers or some combo of these guys here. If we play Justin Jefferson, we literally can't do that, right? The other option here is to play Swift, and I've seen some optimal lineups from some industry sites that have DeAndre Swift as the captain. Let's go here. Let's put in Swift if I can find out how to do this. There he is. Jalen Hurts. Then you could play Jefferson and a $3,400 or less player. That is pretty interesting. But is this low risk? No, because we don't necessarily know the workload of DeAndre Swift. I think a good amount of people will do this in smaller and in low risk contests. I don't think it really fits the definition of low risk. So if you play Hurts, you have to make a decision on which of these top tier guys you have to leave out. Maybe you drop Cousins for Jefferson, but that doesn't seem safe in a low risk setting. So for me, DraftKings, there are multiple decision points you have to make. If you can find a lineup that you like, you can go with it. But I think certainly Swift, certainly Jalen Hurts, certainly Alexander Mattison, those three guys. After that, it's a lot of 3v3s that are, I don't really think it's pretty safe. So a tough, low-risk night on DraftKings. However, that's not the case on FanDuel. Let's go over to FanDuel. And as we see here, we can play Hurts at MVP. We could play the other quarterback, Kirk Cousins. We know half-point PPR scoring quarterbacks more valuable than receivers and running backs. So that's why we're playing Cousins over Jefferson here. We play Madison, the other running back. We play DeAndre Swift, who we expect to get the most snaps at running back for Philadelphia. Now we have 7,500. We can play Scott. We can play Penny. We could play another receiver, maybe KJ Osborne, starting receiver if we want here. Options. But this is the start, and it seems pretty easy. And if you did want to play Jefferson over Cousins, I don't think this is the way to go. 6,500. Are there $6,500 players? Yes, they're not great, so that really makes it so you're going to play Cousins at a $1,000 price savings over Jefferson in your low-risk contest on FanDuel. So if you have access to both sites, you want to play some low-risk contests, some low-risk allocation tonight, FanDuel is the site to do that. All right, let's transition to high-risk contests. GPPs, leagues, satellites. You have to beat a lot of people to win a lot of money. So you have to take some risks. You have to put in some lower-owned players. And you have to make some pivots and some lineup construction pivots in order to surpass those hundreds, if not thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of lineups. So I'll give you, 4 or 5 ideas for tonight for high-risk contests. Let's go back to DraftKings. And I'll pull up my list here on my end so I know what to talk about here. So there are enough low-owned pivots to play popular captains MVPs. So Hurts, we expect to be 30% or so at captain spot on DraftKings because of that, because of the affordability of the Philadelphia running back situation. Let's get Jalen Hurts up here. Going to approach, if not exceed, 50% MVP ownership on FanDuel. But I think you can play those guys. I think if you're the type of player that likes going way overweight, you like playing 100% of a popular captain, typically a stud quarterback. I think you can do it tonight because they're like the opening Thursday night game. There are enough low-owned options to differentiate those lineups. And we'll talk about those here in a second. But you're able to play Hurts MVP or Hurts captain and play multiple players that are going to have a realistic shot of catching a few passes, scoring a touchdown that are going to be less than 10% owned. And that's what we love to see when we're playing a super popular captain. So I think that is one route that you can go tonight. All right, let's see. Option number 2 is just pivoting the Philly running backs. Like, it doesn't get much easier than this. Let's go down. Swift 4K. We mentioned this before. Scott 2,200. Penny 1,600. Do we really know? I mean, if you just look at how DeAndre Swift was treated in Detroit, like they drafted a rookie running back, shipped him off. And if you watch some of the clips from, I think it was Hard Knocks, right, that covered Detroit, Deuce Staley clearly not happy with some of the decision making on the field that Swift displayed. Probably part of the reason, if not most of the reason, that they booted him and Philadelphia took his services. But then if he was so good, Philly would just feature him, right? Remember, Miles Sanders started and played a lot over Kenneth Gainwell last year. Yet somehow through this camp, Kenneth Gainwell is the guy that has outplayed both Rashad Penny, outplayed DeAndre Swift. There may be something, and I don't want to speculate here, right? But there has to be something behind the scenes because the on the field product of DeAndre Swift, at least from our fantasy, looking at the box scores, looking at him when he touches the ball, he's a great player, but he doesn't get all the work. There's clearly something going on with Swift that multiple coaching staffs have now agreed that he doesn't deserve to get all of the touches. So if that's the case, is he 5 times more likely to outscore Penny, 10 times more likely to outscore Boston Scott tonight? No, just look at last week, right? Look at Rashad Penny's early down work in seasons past with Seattle when he's been healthy, and he is healthy. So Swift, the most likely to score of this group, but if you look at ownership, projections are way too confident that Swift is the guy. So excluding Swift and playing either Penny or Scott or both, they're both cheap. You can do it. It makes too much sense to do that in all types of high-risk environments tonight. All right, next. A couple other low-owned plays that I like that got significant snaps, had some design plays from them last week, is on the Minnesota side. Let's scroll down here. CJ Ham just $400. Yes, we're typically not playing fullbacks in Showdown DFS lineups. Ham is not your typical fullback. Got some third down running back work as he was the lone back in some shotgun snaps last week. Designed play action bootlegs in the flat, split out wide. Not your typical fullback. I believe he's even a converted running back, if I'm not mistaken. Someone can fact check me in the comments if I'm wrong there. But Ham, $400, gonna get some touches in the passing game, which is especially valuable on DraftKings. We know he has gotten looks in the past around the goal line in previous seasons. So CJ Ham, one guy, super low owned. No one's really going to go down in this salary section when you could play the Philadelphia running backs just a little bit higher. The other guy I like is Josh Oliver. If you played preseason DFS with us, you know that a lot of beat reporters were very, very, very high on Josh Oliver. And he didn't play much in the preseason, tipped their hand a little bit on how they're going to use him in the regular season. And yes, he's not going to overtake TJ Hawkinson, despite one Minnesota beat reporter in an article yesterday saying maybe that against this Philadelphia team, because of Oliver's blocking, he should play over TJ Hawkinson. Yeah, I'm sure that'll go over well in the locker room. I don't think it's going to happen. But I will say, given how much this team does like Oliver, they designed a lot of plays for him last week. He had 3 catches on 3 targets, but there were multiple plays. I would want to say 5 or 6 where he was one of the primary targets, and coverage took it away, penalty, whatever it was. Oliver at $800 is a guy I really like, going to be like 4% owned, 2% owned, something like that. And when you have a guy, both these guys, Oliver and Ham, when they're getting design touches under 1K, kind of like Deontay Hardy was on Monday night. These are guys that are going to go way overlooked, and we like playing them, especially in smaller contests. I don't know if they're score enough to be optimal in the largest contest. I will play them there just because if they score a touchdown and some of these other guys bust or all the studs go off, you might need one of these guys. But especially smaller contests, right? They score 3, 4, 5 points, and you can jam in the studs. It's a really great way to play a small field lineup. Any other things we need to talk about here? Minnesota wide receivers. All right, obviously we know Jefferson, but look at Jefferson's price tag. He's more expensive than Hurts. $1,000 more expensive than Hurts. That's not the case on FanDuel. He'll be appropriately priced, appropriately owned on FanDuel. But coming off the big game, number 1 overall ADP in season-long leagues, this is going to be the lowest ownership we get on Justin Jefferson, both in the flex and in the captain spot. We expect him to be under 15% in our ownership projections. Maybe enough people jam him and he gets over that. But again, a typical Minnesota Showdown slate, he should be 20% plus, and he's not going to be that tonight. So I think that's worth a shot, especially with those Philadelphia secondary injuries. And then KJ Osborne and Jordan Addison, because of the way the pricing works out with the studs at the top, Philadelphia running backs, kickers, defenses, maybe even the lower-owned Minnesota guys at the bottom. Jordan Addison, their wide receiver 3, played 65% of the snaps last week. The tight ends, especially. They won't go super overlooked, but not going to be 40, 50%, something crazy. And then KJ Osborne at 5K. Both these guys, both Addison and Osborne, we expect to be under 20%. Design plays, good, hashtag good players against a banged up secondary. You can play those guys either in the flex or at captain. You play a Kirk Cousins captain lineups so you figure Kirk Cousins captain lineups, we get the lowest ownership we get for Jefferson. We get Osborne, Addison likely under 20%. Hawkinson appropriately owned. And then we get Ham and Oliver as sub 5% plays. So Kirk Cousins captain MVP lineups where it might be absolutely horrible and they just get freight trained with no offensive line and they score 7 points. However, if they can protect Cousins, a lot of low owned options to pair with him as a captain MVP. And I think that's it. Well, I guess I'll go one more. We saw it on Sunday night. We saw it on Monday night. Are we going to see it for the third night straight with a defense outlier performance? The Eagles, 4,400. We don't. Maybe there's a little recency bias here, and people play them a little more. But with this pass rush against a backup center and a little bit of a banged up left tackle, I think you have to take some shots on Eagles defense. Whether it's a captain in the flex, there is a chance for a massive performance here against Kirk Cousins in prime time. So that'll do it for this video. Thank you for watching as always. First of all, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Something like 60% of our viewers are not subscribed, which hurts our feelings a little bit, let's be honest. But for you, if you subscribe, you'll get notified whenever we go live or upload any new videos, the Showdown, Main Slate, other sports. Just subscribe. It's free to do here on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. I think we got 100 plus likes again last video. So let's keep that train rolling. Let's get 100 plus likes. Let us know that you like this content. Any questions? Comment on the video below. We'll get back to you before the slate starts tonight. If you have any opinions, we saw a lot of opinions in the comments of the last video. Some are right, some are wrong, but some very good calls. So we always love hearing your opinions. So comment on the video, give us your takes, and most importantly, if you have questions, we will answer them there as well. Discord is the other way. People were already asking questions in our Discord this morning, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. Link is in the description below. Chat with other members of the community. And our content will be up later this afternoon. I'm recording this Thursday morning. But our daily plug with the top plays, rankings for each contest type, and lineup construction tips in depth, way more in depth than I can go in this video. That'll be up this afternoon. Occupy models already up and running with projected ownership and player rankings for both sites, as is our lineup builder. Build up 300 lineups using our optimal lineup criteria. So, Brian Jester for Occupy Fantasy, thank you for listening and enjoy tonight's Vikings and Eagles showdown slate.